Welcome to Believe in Celtics. I'm your host, Warren Shaw, and alongside me, as always, the great Gary Washburn, and we're your host and resource for everything Celtics this season and all seasons. Gary, we're tapping in here hours after the trade deadline. How are you feeling, my guy?
Good. Not a lot of crazy moves, but a lot of moves. But an interesting day. It's always a fun day to see what players change teams and who's now a free agent, and now we shift to the buyout market. But it's just always pretty interesting to see, what teams have in mind and what teams ramp up and what teams decide, hey, this ain't our year.
Yeah, I do love that. I think it's fascinating, and we spoke, really briefly off air about some teams and trying to figure out exactly what they're doing. So we'll touch on that, as we get into it. But obviously, this is a Celtics show, so we'll start with them first. But as always, we got to do our plugs. As always, if you're tapping in with us, make sure you give our show a 5-star rating or whatever your podcast platform listening device is. Make sure you follow Gary on X at @GWashburnGlobe. You can follow me at Shaw Sports NBA. You can also follow Believe at Believe Network or at Believe Sports. So the Celtics do make a couple of deals, and I think for both you and I who watch them kind of like Hawks, if you will, still have a roster spot to work with coming out of all of this, right? So they get Xavier, Tillman in a deal, I guess yesterday or the day before the trade deadline. Then also a smaller deal, getting Jaden Springer from the Philadelphia 76er, a guy who played well against Boston in spurts, in the little minutes that he did get against him, if you will, too. But then, Danilo Gallinari obviously goes away. A guy who we wanted to do well, Lamar Stevens, goes away, and he goes to Memphis, where he might actually get an opportunity to get some run now. So probably better for him in the long run. But your thoughts on the two additions to the Boston Celtics, Xavier, Tillman, and Springer, who we assume probably won't get a whole lot of run, but they are on the roster.
I think the Tillman move was a good move. I think it provides depth in the backcourt when you're relying on Al, who's 37 years old and doesn't play back-to-backs, and Kristaps, who has been injury-prone in his career. And I know the Celtics have been very careful with him and rested him probably on several nights where he didn't probably need to rest, but they wanted to just give him that extra breather, take some load off his legs. And they've gotten to game 51, and he's been mostly healthy. So I think the Celtics are like, listen, we're going to get you some relief. Hopefully for them, they can build enough of a lead in the East to where the last, let's say, 10 games is not, gut-crunching time where you're trying to eke out the number one seed. Hopefully for them, you've got the 5-game lead with 10 games left, or a lead that's, we'd say, insurmountable, that you're not going to get caught, because that's the whole thing. The key to the next 20 games is just keeping that lead, keeping Cleveland off your heels, right? And now the Knicks, who are coming up strong and fast. So I think good move for the Celtics to get Tillman for relief. Springer, I remember talking to Brad Stevens before the season started, when they picked up Blanton and they picked up Lamar Stevens, and they picked up, and they signed Kada, that it was situations where you were saying to yourself, you have to try to supplement those first round picks that you trade away. You've got to figure out a way to find prospects to cultivate when you trade away all those first round picks. And as we know, the Celtics have traded away several since Brad took over. He just doesn't like first round picks. No. So this is a guy who, if you don't know Jaden Springer, and a lot of probably common NBA fans don't know who he is, because he's kind of been buried in Philadelphia for a few years now. He was a one and done at Tennessee. He averaged 12 points a game his freshman year, 6'4", probably a little bit more like 6'2", not a big guy, but just a guy who's real. He's a physical specimen, real active, and a guy they can cultivate. He's only 21 years old. That's the thing. You look at these guys now, they're 3 to 4 years in, and they're literally 21. He's 21 years old. I think it's a 28th overall pick in the 22 draft, if I'm not mistaken. The 21 draft. So, he's only played 50 career NBA games. I mean, that's not a lot. And 32 this year. So this is not a guy, Celtic fans, you're going to expect to come in there and really come in right away and help. I mean, he'll be a prospect. He averaged 11 minutes this year. I know last year, because he spent a lot of time in the G League, He played only 2 games as a rookie, 16 games last year. He spent, he was a project. He was a guy who he was maybe, if Philly's version of J.D. Davidson, where it's like, okay, guy, you came out, you're not ready, but we're going to try to get you ready, and we're going to send you to the G League for a couple of years, and maybe year 3, year 4, you'll be ready to contribute. So if you're the Celtics, you're hoping that maybe he can get a spot time here and there, learn from the system, learn from guys like Peyton Pritchard, learn, and get another opportunity. I know he was a little bit upset last year, what I was told, because Doc Rivers does not very much play young guys, and he's young, and Doc did not play him much, and he felt like he should have gotten more time. So let's see his attitude coming in. I think it'll be positive. Probably time for a new start for him. And you know what? See what happens down the road. But this is more of a down the road move than I would think Warren this would be for now. And this is a Banton. He was okay. I mean, nothing spectacular. I didn't particularly see the prospect in him. I didn't see, man, you got a whole, like Kata, I can see the prospect, right? You can see the talent. You can see him turn into a guy who could be a rotation guy one day. Banton, I didn't really see all that much out of him. So I think they said, you know what, let's swap Banton, send him to Portland, and see if he can get a fresh start there, take on Springer, who I'm sure the Sixers with all the roster moves they've made are just trying to get rid of guys and clear space. So I think it worked out for both sides.
So I don't want to take us too far off track because I want to kind of, make sure we can structure the show in an appropriate manner. But one thing that's also interesting for me, without getting too deep into the trade deadline, is that ironically, former Celtics from last year. So let's take Robert Williams, injured, done for the season, I think, for the most part. Grant Williams gets moved in a deal today, over to Washington. Charlotte. Yeah. And then, Marcus Smart has been injured a good part of the season. 3 guys who really embodied identity for Boston in a lot of ways have had very rough seasons. Ironically, while Boston remains to be kind of right at the top of the Eastern Conference and, in the hunt for an NBA title. So when I see that happening, I've just thought today, and I was like, especially when Grant getting moved, I was like, man, for what we thought was going to happen and what they gave up, like those guys just haven't had a great go of it, in their respective destinations, unfortunately. But I'm going to transition that comment, without, necessarily getting your take on it, but we definitely want to kind of go back to it in some capacity. Boston is not done, right? They don't necessarily need to be done because they do still have an open roster spot. So we'll get to the overall trade deadline, but there's a couple interesting buyout names that are coming available. Some probably coming online as we speak here right now. I think I was most surprised, and this is not necessarily a Celtic target per se, but I was most surprised by the flat out waiving of Killian Hayes by the Pistons. I was just like, that's certainly a decision. And they have a lot going on there, but that one caught me a little bit off guard. James Bouknight, also in Charlotte, just say, yeah, we're done with that. Peace out. Daniel House, gets moved and is eventually, I think, is going to get bought out as well too. PJ Tucker doesn't move, from the Clippers and is co-tweeting with your guy Mark Spears, about like what's the situation like. Any of these names, right? Or any of the names that I mentioned, or any names that you might think about, Marcus Morris potentially could become available as well. Any names of interest to you from the Boston side?
Okay. Unfortunately, I think Marcus Morris, I would say Marcus Morris, but I think he's making 16 this year.
There's that number.
Year, that too much. The last year, that 44 and 64 deal he signed with the Clippers. So I think he's out of their price range. Remember, for our viewers, since the Celtics are in the second apron, they cannot add a buyout. They can't. I mean, let's say they can't go after Kyle Lowry, who's making 29 million. They can't go after anyone who makes above the mid-level exception, 12.4 million. So they cannot sign anyone makes 16, 17, 18. None of those. They got to go. They got to go to the Walmart, Ross Dress for Less buyout participants. Okay, they can't get high end They're not going to the Neiman Marcus of high end participants. Sorry to give a plug, but you know what I'm saying they're not going on Rodeo Drive for the buyout market. They're going on the swap meet. So they're going to have to find players who make in that range under 12.4 million. So market, Daniel House would be a guy that they could look at. At this point, I think they're going to wait. I think, can they get that wing that they really want? Will that guy emerge? I just saw Spencer Dinwiddie just got waived by Toronto, so he's a free agent. That's a little bit of a surprise, right? He's a guy who's started all 48 games for Brooklyn this year. Not saying the Celtics would look at him, but the buyout, there was terms of like Gordon Hayward might be bought out, but he got traded, right? If you're looking at someone, like you said, James Bouknight, who's kind of been problems. Killian Hayes, a guy who, was really a kind of a mystery. Like we look at some of these guys who are in the draft, and I think of Dante Exum, and there was so much intrigue with Dante Exum when he came out the same draft as Marcus Smart in 2014. And he was like kind of the mystery guy, but the guy who could be, because people were looking for Giannis, not that impact, but Giannis came into the draft, to the 13 draft with so much mystery, fell to 13, right? And then suddenly he's a megastar. And I'm not saying people look at a megastar, but they're looking for, these guys are intriguing, the ones that you don't really get a chance to see, that didn't play in American colleges. And Killian Hayes was one of those guys that was supposed to be kind of the point guard of the future in Detroit. It never worked out. He requested a trade last week. The Pistons probably like, you know what, we're done, man. Like below 30% three-point shooter, a guy who just didn't look like he was picking up the game. And even though he was getting a lot of run, the Pistons played him, right? It wasn't like he was sitting on the bench, but it was just, I just think time for the Pistons to just say, you know what, man, we need to start cleaning out. Like the worst thing you can have, Warren, is bad young guys, right? Like, you can have bad veterans and you're clearing them out. Their salaries are gone. That's Charlotte. But the Pistons have compiled a bunch of real shaky young guys, and Marvin Bagley's and the James Wiseman's, guys that just it ain't worked out in their first or second location, and it just hasn't worked out for them. So the Pistons have to decide on some of these guys, who are we going to bring, who's going to be part of the next chapter in Detroit. And I think for his sake and for their sake, they were like, man, see ya. And so I think, and I just think that was probably right, him requesting the trade when he essentially had no trade value. Yeah. Now, if you're a team like Charlotte or a team that's really struggling, Portland, or you might take a flyer on him and just have him, pick up some tips, and maybe he becomes, I think a lot of him, I think a guy like Cameron Payne, who was traded today too. But remember, Cameron Payne was a lottery pick, I want to say, went to Oklahoma City, was supposed to be this polished kind of step right in, and he ended up being a mess in Oklahoma City and was in the G League and bounced around and kind of found his footing in Phoenix and then Milwaukee. And so maybe for Killian, there's a road to stay in the NBA, but, buyout guys, I think you're going to have to wait over the next couple of days, Warren, to see who exactly gets bought out. If there's a guy who fits what the Celtics are really looking for and makes under 12.4 million. So right now, I don't see anybody. I mean, would Daniel House really make a big impact? Would that be a guy that you'd want? Do you want to promote Neemias Queta to a standard NBA deal and have that as be your final roster spot? So they got some decisions to make, but I don't think they're in too much of a hurry, because I think the buyout market over the next week or so will develop.
I'm going to ask you just, point blank about one guy, because obviously we've speculated a lot here too, and we don't love to do that per se. But I think, as we're getting closer, like maybe some things become more reality, right? So your thoughts on a PJ Tucker? He makes $11 million, right? And obviously he's clearly unhappy. So I was just on another podcast, and I think if PJ were to get bought out, I don't know him personally, I think if he were to get bought out, he probably goes back to Milwaukee or maybe Miami. I think it's a team that he has familiarity with. But would or should Boston kick the tires on a PJ Tucker if he were to become available?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. He gives you toughness. The thing about PJ is he wants to play. And I think the number one thing Brad Stevens is emphasizing with this buyout market and other guys bringing him in is we don't need a dude on the end of the bench pouting. And that's exactly what PJ Tucker is doing in LA. Because if you're PJ Tucker, remember, he's already won a title. Okay, he's got his championship from the Bucks. So he's like, now I want to go out with a blaze of glory. I want to play on a championship team. I don't want to just be waving the towel and clapping up my younger teammates. I want to play. So if he's pouting in LA, what is he going to do in Boston? And he's got his buddies in LA, Harden, Westbrook, guys he's played with and against for years. It's a good atmosphere. Ty Lue is a coach. And I'm a little stunned that Tucker is doing this because there probably is no better environment for him than LA in terms of just like having a bunch of crew of guys, veterans around you, Kawhi, guys who, respect you and you can, you're living in LA, but he wants to play. And then also, I don't know how the buyout would work with him because he's got a player option for next year. So the Clippers would have to say, not only here's part of the rest of this year's salary, here's some money for next year because we knew you were going to opt in. He ain't taking no buyout from next year because he's going to miss. No team is going to pay him $11 million to play next year. He's going to be a minimum guy, if not a mid-level guy, in terms of like a $5 million guy, something like that. He is not going to make $11 million on the open market at age 38 next year. So if I'm PJ and he's an intelligent guy, he's going to stay in the situation unless the Clippers offer him a real nice buyout. And then he also, Warren, has a team that's saying, hey, work that out and we'll bring you in right away. But, he wants to play for a title. He wants to play. So I don't think that's a good fit at all. You don't need it. I'm not saying he would mess up the chemistry in Boston, but he ain't Blake Griffin. You know what I'm saying? He ain't the guy who's going to sit there and be like, okay, I don't play tonight. That's cool. I'm going to cheer on my teammates. I'm going to be a good leader and role model. He's doing that in LA, but he's also pouting and I came here to play. I didn't come here to sit.
So let's transition now to some of the deals that were made and now the Celtics' potential competition. And we'll start obviously in the Eastern Conference first and foremost. Milwaukee adds Pat Beverly, in a deal. Perplexing to some degree from Philadelphia's standpoint, but they did what they did. Philadelphia adds Buddy Hield to stem the tide offensively while they won't be able to fill Joel Embiid's void. But I think he slots in if and when Embiid does return, doesn't hurt Tyrese Maxey in any capacity. And then the New York Knicks. So we've heard for the last 2 years, hey, we like Bogdanovich here. We're not going to move him. He's going to be a part of the plans, blah, 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 unless you bowl us over with an offer. I don't think they got bowled over with an offer. And what they ultimately do is move Bogdanovich and Burks in the same deal. Burks obviously was not say a target, but it was a potential interest to Boston as well too, especially for the salary and what it potentially would have costed. But the Knicks make a move that truly bolsters their overall roster, for especially now we know Anunoby's hurt, we know Randall's hurt, Mitchell Robinson is hurt, but all those guys are expected back this year. The Knicks are suddenly very deep. Everybody's singing their praises is like, yo, they are right there, right at the top of the Eastern Conference. We know the Cavs didn't make a move, but after the trade deadline, all things considered, who is Boston's toughest competition in the Eastern Conference?
That's a tough one. I mean, I probably would have to say the New York Knicks at this point. Very deep club, as you said, adding Burks, adding Bogdanovich, Anunoby, and then, Mitchell Robinson is supposed to be coming back from an ankle injury. It's just something about the Knicks that doesn't feel like they're going to put it all together so fast this year. That's just something that's a feeling I have. And as much as I, admire the Knicks, and I think, I covered Tibbs in the short time he was here when I was here. He's a nice, good coach, a hard coach, a grading coach and all that, all these Tibbs stories out there. Good, but a good guy. I just don't see, Warren, the Knicks putting everything together this year for a championship. Where I think getting to the Eastern Conference Finals, yeah. Something just tells me that because I just think you have, okay, you've traded Barrett. Okay. So you don't have a number 3 anymore. It's maybe Anunoby, Randall. What happens to him in the playoffs? Because Brunson's your guy. Brunson is your A1. Like he's taking that from Randall. So Randall, to me, is the guy you got to wonder about. Mitchell Robinson, what happens when he comes back? And Anunoby now is out for like maybe 3 weeks to a month with the elbow. Yeah. And I think Bogdanovic and Burks, solid players. Are they real difference makers? I think Bogdanovic can. Burks can hit occasional shots. So I thought it was, and you traded Quentin Grimes. And having seen Quentin Grimes this year against the Celtics, like I wouldn't have moved that. Yeah. That dude can shoot. That brother can shoot the ball. So giving away a 24-year-old prospect for those two guys and the Fournier mistake. I mean, Warren, I remember the Celtics were really trying to bring him back. And I want to go to New York and I want to play in the big city and the Mecca. And it just, my goodness, what a disaster that contract was. And that's the thing, honestly, Warren, the difference between like good organizations and like bad or sometimes shaky ones. Like you don't sign disaster deal. Like the Celtics, you don't hear them signing disaster deals like that. Like you don't, we look at the Joakim Noah deal, the 4 and 72 that Noah got with the Knicks and the Fournier deal. Like you don't see the Celtics, you got to credit Stevens and Ainsley for them. You don't see disaster deals like that too much in Boston. So I don't know if I trust the Knicks, but in Cleveland, I think I said that backcourt and Donovan is a beast and Garland is so silky smooth and can hit the floater but I don't know what happens when they're tested, and those two honestly might meet in the second round again. Yeah. And that would be a very interesting, if you're the Celtics, you got to pick, in the second round, you could face a Milwaukee. And who knows what's going to happen there? Or you could face the Knicks, or you could face the Cavs. Those are the 3 teams, Warren, I think that we're looking at for a second round opponent. If the Celtics happen to get past the first round, which could be Miami, you never know. With fate, I think it will be somehow.
God help us, Gary. God help us.
Yeah, it'll be the Heat, but you don't know, or it could be Indiana. There's a lot of the East is treacherous. The East, because we got Indiana making moves. We got, the Knicks. We got the Cavaliers and Bucks. Philadelphia, who knows when Embiid comes back, but they're going to be a factor. Miami is always going to be hanging around in that 7-8 spot. Like, don't worry about us. Don't feel bad for us. We'll see you when we're ready to see you.
Yeah.
So the East is treacherous, and the Celtics have the work cut out for them down the road.
Let's transition over to the Western Conference. So obviously big plans there. So not necessarily Celtics adjacent currently right now. A lot of games to play before they can talk about reaching the NBA Finals. But, I think by most people's accounts, the Mavs are big winners today, acquiring Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington specifically. The Suns get some depth with Royce O'Neal and David Roddy as well, too. The Thunder get former Celtic Gordon Hayward to add to their bench, assuming he'll come back and be able to be healthy. I like all those moves, for those 3 teams. Minnesota made a move the night before too, getting Monty Morris now to back up Mike Conley, so gives them some nice cadence, if you will, behind Conley at the point guard position when he needs to rest or is injured. Of those moves out west with all those teams, and obviously we'll talk about the purple and gold and the Warriors in a little bit, but of those teams right now who are kind of riding high and playing good basketball, Mavs maybe not as much, but which one do you like the best? Dallas, Phoenix, OKC, or Minnesota?
Wow. I'm going to say OKC. You get a veteran in Gordon Hayward. You get another adult in the room for a really, really young team. And I think that they're ready to take that next step. Yeah. Minnesota, 5-5 in their last 10 games, is starting to stumble a little bit. And the Nuggets are kind of making another surge. So, you got it's crazy, Warren. I mean, the top 4 teams are separated by a half a game. the three-way tie for first, and the Clippers are fourth, and they're a half game back. So I'm going to say the Thunder just for the sake. And as much as I like Phoenix, I don't trust Phoenix. I just think they're too top heavy. You're depending on Beal, who's constantly hurt. Durant and Booker can bring it. Nurkic is your big. We'll see what Royce O'Neal does for them. I think he'll fit right in, but you also traded away, I think, 4 guys for that deal. I want to say like Diop, Watanabe, and Jordan Goodwin, who I actually like. I think was a good player for them when he got a chance to play. Their roster is so strange because it's so top heavy, and you give away you make the Beal deal and you give away a lot of your supporting cast. So I'm going to say the Thunder come out as winners in the Western Conference, just getting Gordon Hayward, a guy now who has something to play for. I think, let's be honest, Warren. It's been a rough stretch for Gordon. He's been paid handsomely for it, but just the Charlotte thing just never really worked out. He goes there, he takes the 4 years and 120 and gets $30 million, which was a mystery to me then. It's a mystery to me now why you would pay him $30 million. What they did, and he played. The Charlotte never won a playoff game when he was there, and even in the 2 play-in games, he was hurt for both of them. Yeah. So now he gets to play for a team. Is not the main guy. Can be a veteran impact leader for guys like Giddey, for guys like Holmgren, for guys like the Williams boys out there. Can just be the adult in the room. I mean, he's 32 now, 33 now, so he can be the veteran that they need. And I think that's what sometimes it's off the floor too, just the guidance, the professionalism, and then can still ball, not obviously at an all-star level anymore, but can still be a difference maker. So I think that's what Oklahoma City needed. You're talking about the intangibles. Minnesota with Monty Morris, okay, that's nice, but he's been hurt all year. I think he played twice or 3 games with Detroit, and kind of a homecoming for him. He's from the Michigan area and never worked out there. And they got rid of Shake Milton for that. And I thought Shake Milton was a kind of a player I saw in Philadelphia was actually pretty good. I agree there. I thought that was kind of a even deal. I didn't really look at Minnesota and thinking, wow, they really upgraded. The Clippers didn't do anything, but I feel like they feel confident in their roster. And the Nuggets, the Nuggets. So I'm going to give it to the Thunder.
And I like what the Thunder did specifically with Gordon. And I think Charlotte did a solid by him as well too, putting him in that situation. So a chance to truly win, get some playoff chops under him now for the first time in a long time, basically since his days in Boston. And it gets to be the veteran and provides a lot of stability potentially for them in that locker room, especially if Jalen Williams J-Dub, if you will, were to have any injuries, can slot right in there too if need to. And they still have Dort. They gave up literally nothing in essence to get Gordon Hayward there too. And I believe his deal is expiring. So remain flexible. Still have all their picks for the most part. So season, great shape. Let's talk a little bit about the purple and gold and shout out to them.
Hold on, Warren. I want to cut you off. I just read here the Pistons are waiving Danilo Gallinari.
Oh,
so another potential buyout because now he can go back to Boston because he's been with a couple of other teams since then. So the limitations, and he's making under $8 million, under $12 million. So another name to look out for. If I think he left Boston on good terms. I think he was a little pissed about the trade, but he missed all year with the knee injury, playing for FIBA. I don't think you can blame the Celtics for moving him. He went to Washington and he's gone to Detroit. So if you want kind of a guy to fill that 15th roster spot, I think the Celtics could take a long look at him and think, hey, maybe he can come in and fill it up a little bit. On that level. Sorry to cut you off. I know we were talking about the Lakers, but just seeing that Gallinari, according to our friend Shams, is going to be waived and he'll be a free agent. And let's see if the Celtics try to reunite with him. I'm looking at his numbers. in a short stint, he played 6 games with Detroit, 58% from 3. So let's look at the totals there, because I know, let's look at the total.
Like
7 for 12.
Okay.
7 for 12. So he was hot. He probably had a heater one of those games he played. In the 26 game with Washington, the better sample size, 7 points, 31% from 3. Not a great numbers for him. He's a career 38% 3-point shooter. So maybe in a different environment, he gets some more open looks. But played 15 minutes a game about this year. So, we'll see. That's something. Will the Celtics revisit that? Could that be a Celtics target? I think from all the guys we've talked about, Warren, Gallinari is probably the most intriguing target, because he gets back to a system that he knows. He's with the team all last year. So we'll see how that goes down.
Yeah, I mean, hey, and absolutely interrupting. I think we said in the onset, guys are being waived as we're recording, and literally, guy got waived as we're recording. So, and Gallo does make a lot of sense if he can get over, I guess, the initial hurt of being traded, a season ago, in essence, to bring Porzingis over to Boston. So yeah, but as we're recording again as well too, today, the great Kobe Bryant for the Lakers, his statue, gets unveiled, an amazing ceremony in that situation, but. That's a great situation. And on the flip side, the Lakers don't make any moves, and all reporting is like, listen, they just didn't feel like a good move was out there. Another team that feels like if they can just get their guys back and somewhat healthy, that will be the injection that they need. Your thoughts on the Lakers standing pat? I guess we got to touch base on the Warriors too, who also stood pat, but the Lakers first here on Kobe Bryant Day.
Yeah, obviously great day for the Lakers in terms of giving him a statue. The statue looked great. Interesting to hear Phil Jackson's words, and it
was always interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, great day for the Laker Nation. But I just feel like maybe the buyout market, if that's possible, they kept everybody, and I think maybe that little boon when they won in Boston, won in New York, won in Charlotte. To put them 2 games above 500, I think maybe they say to themselves, you know what, we still have a shot here. We're getting healthy. Because I think the one thing that they were doing, and maybe a little too much, is blaming it. We're all, remember, AD and LeBron have been pretty remarkably healthy.
Right.
Except when they played the Celtics, and they still beat the Celtics. But, the other guys have been out. Russell now is dealing with something. D'Angelo Russell, Hachimura missed some time. Jared Vanderbilt's out for a while. They've had, Gabe Vincent's never really played for them this year. They've had some real injuries. So I think they feel like, what? Let us, at 27-25, 30 ball games left. What do you say, Warren? You try to go 20-10 if you can in that last. That's probably optimal at max to go 20-10. But you try to go 20-10, get to 47 wins, or get to 45 wins, and get into that, maybe try to push for that 6th seed so you avoid the play-in, because they are 3.5 games behind the Pelicans for the Pelicans and the Suns for the 5th seed. So I think the Lakers look and say, listen, we got some home games coming up after that long Grammy road trip. Utah starting to rebuild. The Warriors, who knows what's going to happen with them. It is their responsibility to pick up and get to that 5th seed, maybe, because I don't think they'll catch the Clippers. They're eight games behind the Clippers. But I think if you look realistically, they say, why not us at 6? And then we'll take our chances with Denver or the Clippers or Minnesota in the first, especially Minnesota. We'll take our chances with a competitive first-round series against one of those teams, even maybe the Thunder. So I think that's if you're the Lakers, that's how you're looking at it. Just put some wins together, get to 45, 46 wins if you can, 44. Try to see if you can catch the Suns or the Pelicans at the 5-6 seed and avoid the play-in. Get and then then take your chances on making kind of one of those runs where the Rockets are 95 or or even the Celtics of 2010, where they were the 4 seed and made the finals. Maybe that's how you can do it.
So let's transition before we close out here. So a couple teams that we've talked about it at length. Again, we don't necessarily need to touch on the Warriors after all, I think. But the Hawks, who you were like, hey, what are they going to do? What are they going to do? They did nothing. The Bulls find themselves standing pat, I think, somewhat oddly as well, and maybe victims of more recent success. I'm not quite sure what happened there. But they don't do anything. And like I said before, I don't even know who's in Detroit right now. But the Bulls and the Hawks, your thoughts there on both of those teams who are in the play-in range. They stand pat, don't make moves despite all the names that were rumored, from the Caruso to Andre Drummond to obviously DeJounte Murray. We've talked about Sadiq Bey a lot as well too. But everybody's staying the same. Your thoughts on those teams specifically before we close out?
Yeah. The Bulls, you just don't know. I guess they feel like they're kind of making a run. They've played well of late. The Hawks, I watched them on Wednesday night. They can score the ball, and they push the Celtics without DeJounte Murray. Now you got a Murray who knows he's not going to be dealt. I think with the Hawks, you're seeing little subtle improvements. I mean, it's tough. I don't understand, Warren. I don't understand the Hawks. I just you got Trey, you got Murray. You got this rising kid, Jalen Johnson. You got DeAndre Hunter. You got Clint Capella. You got Sadiq Bey, and you're 20 and 28. What is wrong here? Why are they so bad? And especially, and I know they don't have home court advantage because Atlanta is not a great home court advantage city for the Hawks. But I just don't understand. I watched them last night, and they played a good 3.5 quarters. In the fourth quarter, the middle way, they kind of relented and they lost. And I guess that's what they do. But they dropped 144 points the other night against the Clippers, but lost 149-144.
Yeah.
Their defense is terrible. Their interior defense, especially without Capella. So I don't understand why. I don't know if it's Quinn Snyder. I don't know if it's they've been through multiple coaches and try to figure this thing out. I thought they were going to take a step this year. I don't understand. I'm confused as to what's going on in Atlanta. And the same with Chicago. I mean, now you run those guys out again. Caruso, Levine is out for the year. DeRozan and Vucevic. Kobe White's having a really, really good year. Probably should be comeback. Sorry, most improved candidate there. And so to me, those are playing teams. And maybe teams that Celtic fans should keep an eye on, because they could come out of that play-in. Because if you're looking at the standings now, it's real competitive. But the Heat are 7, Orlando is 8, Chicago 9, and Atlanta 10. Brooklyn, who is in rebuild, is 11th. So you don't think they're going to make that push unless they somehow pick it up. Toronto, 4 games back. I think all the rest of the teams, Toronto, Charlotte, Washington, Detroit, are all probably throwing in the towel. So you probably have 11 teams for 10 spots if you want to include Brooklyn. So those teams, the Bulls and the Hawks, are likely, unless they go through a catastrophic skid, are going to be in the playoffs and probably be one of the Celtics' first-round opponents. So look forward to that down the road. I don't think any of them are a real threat. Miami is 7. They're a game behind Indiana. Indiana, as I look now, is getting really hammered by Golden State. I don't know what's going on in Indiana, but they're so hot and cold at this point. So a lot going on right now, but I think Chicago and Atlanta both are going to probably be in the playoffs because the East, at the bottom of the East, is so bad. So, hey, I guess they decided to stay in pat. Maybe they'll add in the buyout market, because we heard, like you said, Warren, we heard about Andre Drummond, you heard about Alex Caruso, you heard about DeJounte Murray, especially when he gets scratched from last night's game against the Celtics.
Yeah, you think something's up.
He's going to Lakers, but nothing. So, to me, 2 teams just middling away, and we'll see if they figure it out.
Yeah, we absolutely will see. But again, the Celtics do make some moves and still have an opportunity to make maybe one small move, as you alluded to, maybe a Gallo or whoever else potentially. Again, as long as they meet that threshold of under $12.5 million. But yes, the Eastern Conference did get different. better, and for I think for most people's standpoint, by virtue of the Knicks specifically, and then obviously Philadelphia looming with Joel Embiid's return, hopefully coming back at some point this season. Milwaukee getting some defense and Pat Beverly. So we'll see how this all ends. But Boston still sitting pretty well here. Now trying to sneak their way into the All-Star situation. So before we close out, I got to ask you, Gary, Jaylen Brown was rumored initially. Now I guess it's official. I see his profile picture in the dunk contest. What's happening there? Why would Jaylen Brown? I respect him, but this is all downside. I think from the way I'm looking at it.
Yeah, when you're especially
why make this move?
Competing with like Jacob Toppin, Max McClung, and I forgot who the third guy is, the other participant. In the competition, three guys who don't have much NBA burn or just doing this for the shine. And McClung's a guy who's been in the G League all year.
Yeah.
I just think he wants to try something new. Remember, Jaylen was the guy who was the only NBA player. He played in the Big Three All-Star game, went out to London and played in Ice Cube's Big Three League. And, he likes to set new heights. He likes to test himself. He walks to the beat of his own drummer. So I respect that. And we do wish more and more All-Stars got involved in the dunk contest and wouldn't be dying on the vine like it is. So we'll see if he comes up with anything creative. I'm sure he'll work feverishly. I don't think he'll go out there and embarrass himself. But also you're going against guys who are freakishly athletic too, and who are going to be more underdogs. So the crowd might be supporting these guys more. Jaylen comes out as the established all-star. So who knows how the crowd will react to him, whether they'll give him some love because he's an all-star and he's coming out there and trying his best, or is it because he's the more established guy, so he's going to be the guy that they don't support. So I applaud him for it. I'll just say that. And
that's all you can say.
Yeah, I hope for his sake, and I'm sure knowing him, he will come back and come out with some super duper moves, and we'll come away saying, "Wow, that was pretty good, Jaylen. Much respect." Even win or lose.
Yeah, and it's a respect thing, and I think some players have already applauded him on social for at least trying to bring some name value to it as well too. Because as you alluded to, Jacob Toppin, McClung, and Jaime Jaquez from Miami.
Yeah, sorry, Jaime Jaquez, probably the other more established player, and he's a rookie. So. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I live down in South Florida area, as we know, and if Jaquez beats Jaylen Brown, it's just gonna be something else for Heat fans to kind of dig in about, but one way or the other. Well, shout out to Jaylen Brown for at least giving it a go. We'll see how it plays out for him in Indiana. That'll wrap it up here for our trade deadline edition here of the Boston Celtics podcast. Believe in Celtics here. Gary, thank you so much as always. Make sure you follow him at G Washburn Globe. Make sure you catch his writings over at the Boston Globe, bostonglobe.com. You can follow me at Shaw Sports NBA and follow Believe, on all their social outlets as well. We'll see you in a little bit here. See what the Celtics will bring here for the next coming week before All-Star. Be throttling down here a little bit, obviously, as we think. Hopefully they can stay healthy. We'll catch you next week, y'all. Peace out.